So I want to talk about time loops and maybe some kind of simulation that we might be living in. And I have some experiences that seem to point to the idea that we might be in a matrix. And I don't know if anyone else has experienced these things, but if you have, that'd be really interesting to hear about it. Or at least, comment in the comment section below. I like to start my story out by telling you about how it all started in New York, when I was living in New York, and I was a pizza delivery guy. I was delivering pizza, and I had this. I just finished a delivery, and I was going back to the pizza joint, and I was heading back, and I was stopping at a stoplight, and I was pulling up to the stoplight. I see on the side of the road a young man, probably about 6 foot tall, white guy, with a backpack on, with earbuds in, and he's staring at his phone as he's walking, just totally staring into his phone, oblivious to everything else around him. And so I'm like, wow, this guy, he's not paying attention. He's gonna walk into traffic. It's just foolish. And so there I was thinking about these things, and the guy steps in some bubble gum, and he stops himself in his tracks, and he just what starts cursing at him, just all upset, and I kind of laughed, and I said, serves you right, for not paying attention. And sorry, I'm a truck driver, and my load is getting unloaded right now, so it's shaking the whole truck. This is just what happens. Feels like a bunch of wolves attacking a carcass. It's really uncomfortable. Anyway, so I'm gonna try to ignore that. Let's try to ignore it. So yeah, what happens is I carry on just like normal. I head back to the pizza joint and do my job. And then 3 weeks later, I've got a delivery out in the same area, and I'm driving back to the same stoplight, and the light's red. I'm slowing down for the light, and on the side of the road I see it looks like the same guy, and he is staring at his phone, oblivious, with his headphones on, he's got the backpack on, he's staring at his phone, walking, and just walking down the sidewalk, just oblivious. And I start to say and think the same things as I did before, but then he steps in the bubble gum, and it stops him, and I was about to say the same thing I said before. It serves you right, but I didn't say it. I stopped myself, and I realized I experienced this already. This has already happened. This is deja vu extreme. I mean, how is this possible? And my mind was just reeling. I mean, like 2 weeks after, I was still affected by what happened, because it was so surreal, so uncanny, that I had a hard time adjusting to the idea that it had happened already and happened again. I mean, everything was like the same. Even the light, even the sunlight that day was the same as before. It was very. The wolves are attacking the carcass. Sorry, it's just shaking everything. So, that was my first time loop or time anomaly. I don't know how to explain it, but that affected me pretty substantially, and I thought that was it. There wasn't going to be anything else. Well, the story doesn't end there. Before I moved to New York, I had moved from California to Utah, and when I moved to Utah, the first place I stopped was Carl's Jr. restaurant, the fast food restaurant. And I stopped there, and instead of going through the drive-thru, I went in the dine-in room, and I wanted to relax a little bit after my long drive, and I go in and I order a Santa Fe chicken combo meal, and the young lady who's taking my order, she's Hispanic, probably about 20 years old or so, and I ask, I want to change the French fries to crisp cut fries or waffle fries, and she says, okay, no problem. So she gives me my drink, and I go over to fill the drink up at the fountain, the soda, and next to is this older lady, Hispanic as well. She's like a manager. She's sitting there next to the fountain, the soda fountain, and she was observing us as I was taking she's getting my order taken, and she calls my number up, and she says, "Oh, here you go," and I go to get my food, and the fries aren't there. So I explained to her, "No, I ordered the combo meal," and she's like, "I don't understand." And then the manager behind me, sitting next to the fountain, the soda fountain, she says, "Oh no," she says in Spanish. She says, explains to her the misunderstanding, and then the young lady says, "Oh, okay, I get it, I understand." And she goes and grabs the fries for me, and I thought, that's that, no big deal, and so I lived there in Utah for about a year, and then I moved to New York, and that's where I had the bubblegum guy, time loop, and then I moved back to Utah after 10 years, and the first place I stopped, the same Carl's Jr. I stopped there and I ordered the same meal, and the same lady, I was like, I didn't want to believe it, and the same lady's working there, same young lady. Of course, she's 10 years older, and then behind me in the dining room is the same older Hispanic lady who's manager. She's sitting there, and I was just, it wasn't clicking yet, but it started feeling really familiar. And I ordered a meal, and she gets the meal out, and then I go up there to get it, and the fries aren't there. So I go, "Oh no, I ordered a combo meal." and she's, I don't understand. And then the manager behind me speaks to her in Spanish, explains the misunderstanding, and I'm like, oh, I freeze, because I knew I'd experienced this before, and I froze. I just letting them, letting them talk and do whatever, and I felt really freaked out, actually, because this has happened now twice, where some kind of weird time loop had happened, and I experienced the same thing before, but 10 years earlier. It was just, I was like, what is this? How do I explain this? So I go away from that experience, and I'm living in Utah, and the interesting thing is that when I first moved to Utah, I went to that restaurant, and then later I was invited to a party, and I go to this party, and it's a going away party, because these people that own the house bought a new house and they're moving to a different city, so they're throwing a go away party for themselves. And so I'm there, and I get there, and they got dancing in the driveway, a DJ, and all that good stuff, and I go inside the house, and I introduce myself, I make some conversations with people, and I met this man who fixes grandfather clocks, and he's telling me how he does it, and I asked him, "Is that lucrative?" And he says, "Oh yeah, no one else does it. It's rare, so I got plenty of business." And then he says, "But the taxes, I can't stand the taxes," and it's because if you're self-employed, you're going to be taxed a lot. So anyway, so he tells me a lot of details about his job, what he does, and And then I excuse myself, I have to go use the restroom. So I go and stand in line at the restroom, and I meet this woman and this older lady, and we start talking, and I tell her about my plans for the future, about building guitars and creating a side business and doing that kind of stuff. Anyway, so the party ends, I go home, don't think much about it, and I move away to New York. Then 10 years later, I moved back from New York to Utah, and that's when I experienced the Carl's Jr. restaurant time loop. And then after that, I was invited to a party. Yeah, it gets weird. I go to this party. As I'm driving there, things are starting to look familiar. And I get there, and there's people dancing in the driveway, the DJ going, and I go, well, okay, this looks familiar. Sorry, I have to get something to drink here. So yeah, I go in the house, and I meet a guy, and I start talking to him, and he says he fixes and repairs grandfather clocks. And he starts talking about he doesn't like taxes. And I go, okay. And then I go, excuse myself, and go to the restroom. I stand in line at the restroom. I meet an older lady, and I start telling her about my plans. And this time, what's different is I actually am doing the thing that I told her before that I was going to do. I'm doing it now. So I'm building guitars, and I'm creating a side business, and so it all kind of clicked at that point. I was like, okay, I have experienced this before, and this has happened, and I was like, this is another one of those weird things that's, it keeps happening. So I think, well, I got to go and confirm something with the lady that invited me to this party. So I go and I find her before I leave, and I ask her, so, didn't these people years ago have a going away party because they're moving? And she says, oh yeah, they never moved, but now they're moving. Now they're moving, yeah. So I'm like, oh boy, this is just too freaky. And I didn't explain anything to her. I didn't tell her what I was going through, because it's just too weird. That's too much to cover. So I drive home, and I'm going, what is going on? So the question is, are we living in this simulation? Is it all ones and zeros? Like, some scientists are saying that computer code is what they keep finding. And, are we living in some kind of video game? Some kind of simulated game? And maybe we're all NPCs, non-player characters. Maybe we are, or maybe we're not. But here I am thinking about it, and does a program get to have free will to think, and try to figure out what the heck's going on, or what environment that they're in? I don't know. But just like a non-player character, you meet someone and they say the same things, and they have the same responses, just like in a video game. You go to a bar in a video game, and the bartender, you ask them, how's the weather? And they're like, I don't know, I haven't been outside. And of course, you go away from that bar in the video game, leave, and they come back later, like days later or whatever, and you ask them the same question, they're going to have the same response. Because that's their program. So that feels like that's what we're in, but then I don't know, there's so many different ways to take this. And I remember someone telling me, maybe you're here for a reason, and you're here to observe your choices and make better choices. Maybe you're giving a second chance, and I don't know. So what I do is I try to follow synchronicities. And if there's something that is like, oh, that's interesting, I was just thinking about that the other day, and now this person's talking about it, and so I'll follow the lead, and see where it takes you. So maybe that's how to do it. I don't know. But the fact that this thing's happened to me 3 times, and probably more, because some of the stuff that's happened I know I've just blown off and forgotten about, because it wasn't too big of a deal. But these 3 incidences really stuck with me and pretty much freaked me out. But you know, you can't let it absorb your life. You can't let it overcome, you know, your life, and because it'll ruin it. You can't think about it too much, and you just have to live your life and not focus so much on trying to figure it out, because there's some questions we don't have answers to, and we might not ever know. And so maybe eventually something will click, and I'll go, that's why I'm here. This is what I'm doing. This is why this has all happened. And that'd be great. But so far, nothing yet. Maybe I'm building up to a, you know, to a ending or beginning. I don't know. But it's just like, you know, you follow the synchronicities. Just like in the movie The Matrix with Neo, where he's being texted on his computer by someone, and they're telling him, follow the white rabbit, and he's like, what, you know, what's that mean? So he ends up answering the door because he's got some people he needs to talk to, and these people were like, why don't you come with us and, you know, take a load off, you know, you need some time away from, you need to unplug. And he's like, I got some things to do. But then he sees on this young lady a tattoo, a white rabbit, and then he changes his mind. He's like, oh, I got to follow this lead. So that's how he finds out. He eventually finds out he's in the Matrix. And so maybe following the synchronicities will lead you to the answers you're looking for. Let's hope. Anyway, you're probably wondering why I have these glasses on. I don't know, Mr. Anderson.